Breaking the Chains, Healing from Emotional and Physical Abuse. This is Season 3, Episode 4. This is the last episode of Season 3. You all can donate by clicking the link in the description below. Also, you can purchase my merchandise by clicking the link in the description below. Thank you all so much for your continued support. And I am your host, Kelly. I will be concluding my discussion about manipulation in an abusive relationship. Again, I am your host, Kelly, and this is the last episode of Season 3. The abuse doesn't stop after you leave your abuser. Emotional manipulation is when the manipulative person uses their victim's emotions to get what he or she wants, to steer their victim's behavior or influence your ideas. Emotional manipulation is when a manipulator controls their victim's emotions, behaviors, or ideas. When a manipulative person threatens to harm themselves, then it is a manipulation tactic to try to persuade their victim to stay with him or her. In reality, the manipulative person will not harm themselves. Also, a manipulator is threatening to kill themselves to their victim is to gain attention to themselves. Most manipulators are narcissists. A narcissist believes that they are the head over everyone else, only cares about themselves, wants to maintain all power and control over their family, child or children, and partner or ex-partner. Most manipulators have an enabler or enablers in their lives. Let me restate that again because this is true. Very, very true statement. Most manipulators have an enabler or enablers in their life. An enabler or enablers is a person or people who always justify or indirectly someone's harmful behavior, meaning justifying a manipulator and narcissistic actions that are extremely dangerous. That's what an enabler or enablers do. Here are 10 characteristics of an enabler or enablers. This is how most manipulators and narcissistic people, like I said before, they do have an enabler or enablers that will justify their toxic behaviors. And this is 10 characteristics of an enabler or enablers. 1. An enabler or enabler ignores the problem. 2. Supports the chaos. 3. Covers for the narcissist or manipulator. And most of the time a manipulator is a narcissist. 4. Shifts all the blame. 5. Avoids the truth and reality. 6. Diminishes the severity of their dangerous actions. 7. Denies what's happening. 8. Avoids setting boundaries with the manipulator. 9. When the enabler or enabler set boundaries with the narcissist, then he or she will not stick with their boundaries. 10. Provides financial help to the manipulator, which I said most likely the manipulator is narcissistic. Here are 5 ways that you can stop being an an enabler to a narcissist or a manipulator. 1. Let the manipulator feel the weight of their actions. 2. Establish boundaries and stick with the boundaries with the narcissist. 3. Protect yourself and others. 4. Cut off financial help. 5. Live your life. 5. What that means, like live your life. This is how you stop being an enabler to a narcissistic person or manipulator. If you live your life and quit focusing on if you quit focusing on the manipulator and shifting blames to the victims, then actually the manipulator will have to take accountability for his or her actions. Here's 11 signs that proves a manipulator has a enabler or enablers. And like I stated before, most likely a manipulator or narcissistic person will have an enabler or enablers in their life. Meaning they always will take up for the manipulator or narcissistic person's toxic behaviors. They will continue to shift blame to the victim or victims. They will not let the abuser or manipulator, same thing, face the accountability for their toxic behaviors. So, here are the 11 signs that proves a manipulator has an enabler or enablers. 1. Enablers ignore or tolerates their problematic behavior. Even if a manipulator's loved one disagrees with their loved one's behavior, he or she will ignore it because they're afraid of acknowledging the manipulator's traits, or the enabler is scared of what the manipulator will say or do if he or she challenges their behavior. 2. Providing financial assistance. A manipulator tends to use their money recklessly, impulsively, and because their manipulator cannot manage their money, when an enabler or enablers provides financial assistance to a manipulator, it will have damaging consequences if a manipulator has addictions to drugs or alcohol. Also, when an enabler provides financial help to a manipulator that can't manage their money, the manipulator will become financially dependent on their enabler or enablers. 3. Covering for them or making excuses. An enabler or enablers will cover or make excuses for their manipulator, for they don't want people to judge the manipulator's behavior harshly or negative. This will not help the manipulator change their toxic trait or toxic traits. 4. Taking on more than their share of a manipulator's responsibilities. The enabler or enablers will take on a manipulator's daily task, like doing their chores, babysitting their children, buying and picking up their groceries. 5. Enablers avoid the issues. all the time this happens when a manipulator or narcissistic person has when a narcissistic or manipulator has enablers, they avoid the issues. That is number 5. For example, when the manipulator physically abuses their partner, then the enablers will ask their partner, "What did you say or do to make him or her very angry?" When an enablers avoids a manipulator's physical abuse, it's avoiding their toxic traits, and that isn't healthy. 6. Brushing things off. This is also another thing enablers do. The enabler will convince themselves that the manipulator's toxic traits isn't that bad. By doing this, then you are proving to a manipulator that his or her toxic behaviors have no consequences in life. 7. Denying the problem. When an enabler or enablers denies a manipulator's problems, he or she is encouraging their toxic actions. Therefore, the manipulator will not seek professional help because their enablers are denying their problems. 8. Enablers sacrifice or struggle to recognize their own needs. Enablers are so consumed by a manipulator, he or she sacrifices their own needs like relationships and self-care. 9. Not following through on consequences. This is what also enablers do. By not following through with a manipulator's consequences, then the manipulator will continue to show their toxic traits because they know that their actions will have no consequences. 10. Enablers not maintain their stated boundaries. When an enabler state boundaries with a manipulator, and the manipulator continues to jump over the boundaries, therefore the enabler will not stick with the boundaries. So yet again, the manipulator or toxic person continues to believe that their toxic behavior is acceptable when it isn't. 11. Enablers feel resentment. A pattern of enabling the manipulator will lead to resentment, anger, and disappointment. Also, a manipulator never faces reality. The reason that the manipulator will not face reality because he or she wants to remain superior over their victim or remain in control over the relationship. Final thoughts about manipulation tactics. Realizing that your experienced manipulation tactics can be both shocking and validating. Understanding different tactics can help you make sense of your experiences and prevent or avoid them in the future. Remember that you're not alone. You are worthy of love and respect, both from yourself and those around you. If you feel like you struggle to trust yourself or find it difficult to think about yourself after or during being with a manipulative person in your abusive relationship, And here's how you can protect yourself from manipulation. When you have this trust within yourself, you have to be self-aware. This involves understanding a manipulative person's characteristics and being grounded and having insight about a manipulator. You won't question your reality. You will be able to know the truth about a manipulative person and react with a cool and calm head and heart. So to wrap this up, what I really want victims to know that are going through emotional or physical abuse or have been through it, most likely you're dealing with a manipulator. And when you're dealing with a manipulator, a manipulator usually has an enabler or enablers. And always an enabler or enablers will defer the toxic behavior that the manipulator is doing to the victim, defer it onto the victim instead of making the manipulator take accountability and show accountability for their toxic actions. And when you are enabling this kind of behavior for months or years with a manipulator, they will never seek help from a professional. Most likely they will never change because they have that enabler or enablers in their life. So, however, you will begin to see that also the characteristics, as I stated on this podcast, of an enabler and enablers in your narcissistic person or manipulative person, because the enablers will not stick to their boundaries, like I stated. They might set them, however, they do not stick with them. And they always like make excuses. They will say like, what did you like? Say, for example, the narcissistic or manipulative person physically abuses their victim. So the enablers will come and seriously state this to the victim. What did you do to make him or her so angry? And you're thinking, are you kidding me? Because you did nothing to make him or her angry. Because there is no excuse for violence, domestic violence, physical or mental. And so they're deferring that physical violence, blaming it on the victim instead of the abuser or the manipulator. So that's not making the abuser or manipulator, which they're all tied together in my opinion, and they're narcissistic. So they're not making them take any accountability for their actions. So they will continue not to seek professional help. They'll continue to abuse their victim physically. And here's an example like of mental abuse. Say the manipulator or narcissistic person says, you're crazy. They always like to stick to that one too. Like, you're crazy. It's all in your head. However, it isn't on the victim. But that's what the manipulator will do. They try, and the abuser, I say, like, all tied into one, they're narcissistic. And they'll call you crazy. And so the enabler will not. That's why I say enablers are only making the situation worse, because They're deferring all of these toxic behaviors, the mental and physical abuse that this manipulator is doing, or abuser. Like I said, I believe that's tied into one or narcissistic person. They defer it all onto the victim or victims. Oh, it's not your fault. Telling that to the manipulator. That's what enablers do. Oh, that's just them. However, when you keep blaming other people and you're not letting a manipulator or manipulative person or abuser or narcissistic person take accountability for their actions, they will never change. They will never get help. And that's why I believe that's why domestic violence is such on a rise, because we have too many enablers in these abusers' lives. And that's why domestic violence is also on a rise, because you have family members, you have friends making every kind of excuse for this manipulator, this abuser, or this narcissistic person. Therefore, he or she will not go seek professional help that the abuser really needs, or the manipulator. As I say, I believe that's tied in one or narcissistic person. They will never seek professional help. They will never change, because the abusers have all these enablers saying, oh, it's not your fault. It's everyone else's fault that you're so that they'll try to blame, like, them being so angry on their victim. They have all these excuses, and for emotional abuse as well. Enablers will not make an abuser or manipulator, which I say someone or narcissistic person, take accountability for their toxic behaviors. And therefore, that's why I named off characteristics on this podcast of enablers. Because as my many years of personally speaking as experienced, an abuser, manipulator, toxic person, like I say, is tied into one, in my opinion, and they will always have an enabler or enablers. Sometimes they will have more than one enabler. They will have 2 or 3 enablers, like their family, their friends, because they're not letting that abuser take any accountability, or manipulator. Like I said, I believe that's tied into one or narcissistic person. Just sit down for it. They need to just sit down and be real with them and say, look, you have this problem. You need to get professional help. They will not do that. Enablers will not do that. And they might do it because they want to avoid, conflict, or they will not make the manipulator take accountability, because they don't want everyone else to know, like their other family members to know, their church members, their pastor, they're trying to hide their toxic behavior. The enablers are, or they're making excuses for it because they don't want other people to know about it. However, this isn't healthy. It's not healthy for manipulators, not healthy for abusers to have all these enablers in their lives. Therefore, they will not change because of the enabler or enablers. And thank you all so much for your continued support. Like I said, this is my last podcast for season 3. Season 4 is going to be so exciting. We have some new stuff for season 4. However, you have to stay tuned to find out for season 4, but season 4 will be more exciting. And thank you all so much for your continued support. Again, you can donate by clicking the link in the description below. Also, you can purchase my merchandise by clicking the link in the description below. And I really hope that you all have an amazing weekend.